Please welcome Paula Rinehart.
Well, I will tell you honestly that one of the reasons I love to come to Virginia, and I always accept any invitation that I get to come to Virginia, because things are done so beautifully here. They are done so beautifully here. I am actually an old Virginia girl. I grew up in the western part of the state, and both sides of my family have been in Virginia since the English owned it. Now, while I have spent 15 years in the Midwest and 20 years now in Raleigh, when I come to Virginia, I always feel that I am home. I am as home as I am going to be on this planet. I have been invited to speak to you today on the subject, actually, of strong women's soft hearts, which is something I wrote about a few years ago. And you might be interested to know kind of how this came about. I would send off chapters to a publisher, and he would write me back and he said, well, this is some good stuff, but what is the point? And I would think, well, isn't that obvious? And one day in the shower, I thought, okay, how hard can this be? I am just trying to write about what it means to be a strong woman with a soft heart. And bingo, I realized that was the title, Strong Women's Soft Hearts. And indeed, as I have spoken on the subject through the years, I realize it is a universal longing among women. Now, it was around the age of 40 that I got fascinated, really, with what it actually meant to be a strong woman in our culture. And I sensed that whatever was on those magazine covers as I came through the grocery store line that looked so with it together probably didn't have much depth of real strength. And I began to wonder if it was possible, actually, to preserve what was soft and receptive on the inside without developing a tough outer crust, because I could feel the temptation to that. I was old enough by that point in my life to realize that life can knock the stuffing out of you, and that no one escapes. Not loud enough? Ah. Is that better? Yeah. I'm so sorry. People tell me I'm losing my voice. Yes, even I can hear this. So I realized by that point in my life that I was old enough to recognize that life can really knock the stuffing out of you, and that no one escapes. People of faith and people of no faith get terrible diseases, and their children die, and their marriages fall apart. I recognized in myself the attractive temptation at that point in life to just kind of shut it down on the inside. To stop taking very many risks, to maybe just get some, I don't know, better makeup, you know? Do something to the outside of me. Hope that I could hold it together. But fundamentally, to live a small life. That was the temptation. And I began to realize some common but convoluted ideas about strength and softness. I saw strength, actually, as that ability to keep going and going and have nothing bother you. And softness, in my mind, was entirely suspect. Softness meant that you could get hurt. You better watch out for softness. Now, I will tell you that, unfortunately, if that's what strength and softness mean to you, sooner or later it will hit the fan. Because life happens, and chances are it will bother you at points. It will bother you, and you may not be able to keep going and going. And with all your best efforts, you will hurt the people that you love, and you will be hurt by them. So I realized as I was putting this together in my own life that, oh my goodness, this is a problem. I have a problem. It's a bit like a counseling conversation. I do some counseling 2 days a week. And it's a bit like a counseling conversation I had years ago with a woman. You know, sometimes in the world of counseling, you are the person changed, not the person you're talking to. And this woman was a youngish sort of woman, and she had survived a mild heart attack. She'd done really well. I mean, the doctor had given her a clean bill of health. She could go for it. But she's 2 or 3 years out from that, and what was she doing every day? Well, she was cleaning her house and taking a walk and going out to lunch with a friend. And by that point, she was kind of depressed, but she had a very clean house. Very And I said to her, I said, well, goodness, you used to be interested in these things, and you could do this, you could do that. Life is this big smorgasbord. What are you? You've got, someone has given your life back to you. And she would always say the same thing. She'd say, Paula, you don't understand. I am afraid that I'm going to die. Finally, one day, because I didn't know what else to say, really, I leaned over and I said to her, you are going to die. You are. And that is not the question. Are you going to live? And as soon as I said those words, they bounced back to me because I realized, oh my goodness, that is the question in my life too. Am I going to live? I mean, are you going to get your little self out there on the dance floor of life where anything can happen and it is guaranteed that your toes are going to be bloodied? Where do you get the umph to do that in life once you figure out that life can bite? It can hurt. That is what we are up against. Now here's where I think I should tell you a little of the backstory of my life, okay? I was asking these questions as a woman who in her college years met Christ. There are 100 ways to put that. I found Christ, he found me, I discovered Christ. None of the euphemisms quite fit to me. Here's the way I think of it in my own mind. Some women go away to college and they fall in love with a guy. I fell in love with Jesus. I mean, I really did. It was like a brave new world. And I thought, where has this been all my life? This is incredible. I am 40 years away from that. And I am still in wonder at just how amazing, really, God is, at his goodness and his faithfulness in my life and in yours. So I could sense really that it was God who was pulling me along this trail about strength and softness. I could sense that he was saying to me, look, Paula, you have got the wires crossed, honey. You got this upside down. There is a strength that is rooted in God that just comes back stronger when you are knocked down. And there is a softness that is actually a fearless vulnerability. The ability, I'm sorry, a gust of Virginia wind. There is a softness that is a fearless vulnerability, an ability to offer yourself to other people. Because at the root of your being, you have experienced what it is to be loved by Christ. A fearless vulnerability. But I could sense that God was saying to me, look, Paul, if you want more of that, honey, if you want to taste that, you're going to have to let your faith, your actual experience with Christ, touch the places in your own soul that you have locked away. Places of fear and doubt and anger and shame. You are going to have to let the real stuff of your faith touch the real places in your heart. Now, there's a way that Paul expresses this in the New Testament. He says it like this. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, the deep places from which you see life, so that you may know what is the hope of your calling and the riches of his inheritance to you, the surpassing greatness of his power to you who believe. Isaiah in the Old Testament, I so love Isaiah, he quotes God as saying that men may know from the rising of the sun to the setting that there is no other God. I am the Lord, he says, and there is no rock besides me. So this is the reality of one's faith, but it has to be brought into those moments where you are staring in the bathroom mirror at 4 o'clock, wondering why you are so anxious you cannot sleep. It has to be brought into those moments where someone important says something kind of critical, and you shrink on the inside to about 2 inches tall. And as the reality of your faith begins to touch those places, there is a strength and a softness that is remarkably possible. And that was what I began to discover. I also began to read the stories of women in the New Testament, their encounters with Christ. One in particular kind of fascinated me. My hesitancy in sharing her story today is that perhaps you have heard it a number of times, and therefore it may make it harder to hear her story today. It is the story of the Samaritan woman. She's never named. She's just known as the woman from Samaria. And this woman, she came from the wrong side of the tracks. She came from people that nobody liked, and this was a woman with a reputation. She had had a string of men through her life. This is a woman on the fringes of her culture. And the reason we know this is because a little detail in the story, and honestly, this is part of why I love the Bible, because it's like a detective hunt, these little details that tell you so much. She came out at 12 noon to go to the well to fill her water jars. Well, nobody goes out in the heat of the day, and she knew that. She didn't want to see a soul. She wanted to be all by herself. This was a woman in hiding, and this is where Jesus met her. Honestly, I would say to you, it's kind of where he specializes in meeting us, the places where we are in hiding. Each of us, I think the reason this story is so universal is that each of us recognizes within ourselves some place where things are flawed, they are weak, they are broken, they are sinful. And we know that if someone could see us there, we would not be wanted. We would not be putting our head out in the middle of the day either. This is where Jesus meets her. He steps right into the middle of that. And he speaks to her as this Jewish woman talking to a Samaritan woman, which was absolutely not done. So right in the beginning, he kind of busts her categories, which honestly you will find is very characteristic of someone as they encounter Christ in their life. He does tend to bust our categories. And he says to her very simple things. He says, "Give me a drink," which is a way of saying to her, where are you trying to draw the water of life from, honey? Do you know how thirsty you are? Do you know how desperately you are thirsty? And she's thrown off balance. She begins to babble like any of us would about, where her ancestors worshipped, and Jesus just lets her talk. And then he says to her what he came to say, which is that the water he would give her would become a spring of water, a whole spring of water, welling up inside of her to eternal life. She hears it clearly. She essentially says, oh my goodness, a never-ending supply of water. That is indeed what Jesus offers. So when life comes at me and my thirst is most desperate, when my fears and my shame are exposed, when I have lost my truest human love, when I have made a mistake I don't think I can come back from, it's actually there, that there is real, clear, and fresh water that touches my thirst. There is forgiveness, there is hope of a new future, and I'm not alone. So who would not want that? The Samaritan woman wants that. And really, this is the way that God talks to us. He says, look, stop, pay attention. Where are you trying to draw the water of life from? Where is your thirst taking you at this point in your life? Is it the next trip you're going to make? Is it the next 10 pounds you hope to lose? Is it what you hope your children will go out there and do? He says, if that's where you're trying to draw the water of life from, you will die of thirst. And the reason that I know that is that you and I were just made for so much more than that. It can never satisfy. So this woman, the Samaritan woman, she wants this water. She says so. And Jesus looks right at her and he says, go call your husband. What a moment. She says, I don't have a husband, which is her moment of truth. And he says, indeed, you have had 5 husbands. And the man that you are with now is not your husband. Well, I would say to you that this is absolutely the most attractive, life-changing aspect of being a follower of Jesus. It is. It is this intense, searing light capable of exposing the worst in me. At the same time, I am enveloped by a love that is so real and so personal, you could drown in it. There's so much freedom here. There is the freedom for a new life. You see, the Samaritan woman, we're so much like her because she mirrors to us our deepest longing. You ever wondered what the deepest longing of your heart is? I would suggest to you, if you peel it back, it will be this. It is the longing to be known as you really are.
and still loved. That is the miracle of the gospel. That is the miracle of Christ in your life. To be known as I really am and still loved. Now, I drove here from North Carolina to encourage you to think about a few things. To think about where it is you are trying to draw the water of life from. Where are you going with your thirst? Where are you taking your fear and your shame and your guilt? And can you picture what it would be like to have a strength in your life that is greater than you are? Can you imagine a softness that is continually renewed by the love of Christ? The year that my mother turned 77, she was invited to a gathering like this. And I was so surprised she went. And someone at the gathering invited her to a women's Bible study. And lo and behold, the woman went. I nearly fell over. And the backstory to that is this. When I stepped in this direction in my 20s, I'm the oldest child and only daughter. And when I stepped in this direction in my 20s, my mother mourned it. This was not in her plan for her daughter, and you know as mothers, we all have plans. Right? Well, getting a little religion, getting too much religion was not in her plan, okay? My mother was a Virginia Tech professor. She was the second woman ever to teach in the business school there. She was one tough cookie, okay? So I would say to her through the years, I would say, Mother, you know, there's this incredible women's Bible study over in Blacksburg. I think you'd really enjoy it. She would look right at me and she'd say, Paula, you know that intelligent people don't believe the Bible. And I would think, I would not say, but I would think, well, you know, I've met a few who actually believe that book. But I knew not to say anything. It was dangerous. So you can understand why I was so shocked that she went to the gathering and then, oh my goodness, she showed up at the Bible study. And a few months into that Bible study, she said, you know, there is just so much to the Bible. I'm kind of amazed by it. And honestly, the words were on the tip of my tongue. I so wanted to say, I told you that 30 years ago. But before I could get a word out of my mouth, this picture flashed in front of me with duct tape around my mouth. And I knew it was God saying, don't you mess this up. Do not say a word. And so I just shook my head. Yeah, there's a lot there. My favorite response by her during that whole year, she said to me, she said, you know, that woman who's teaching that, she is an incredible teacher. And my mother knew a good teacher. And then she kind of leaned over and she whispered, she said, I think she buys her clothes at Talbot's. And I said, yeah, I bet that helps her Bible teaching. But you know what I thought? I thought, God, you will use anything. You will use anything. My mother died this summer at 87. She went to that Bible study really as long as she could haul her little self through the door. And I would tell you that if she had any regret, I know what she'd say to you today. She would say that her regret was that she did not drink water from the well named Jesus 30 years at least before she did. And what she would say to you, and whatever opportunity is out there for you to kind of step in this direction, you know what she'd say to you? She'd say, don't miss this. Don't miss this. Perhaps this is the year in your life, really, to knock on the door called God and discover there is someone there. And that he has been in pursuit of you for a long, long time. What I can promise you is that he offers you a strength that is larger than you are. Strong enough to handle the worst things in your life. And that there is a softness there that is renewable because it is fed from within by the never-ending stream of the love of Christ. So blessings on you, and I close really with my mother's words. Don't miss this.